Why did the Archon War happen? Originally, I assumed the Archon War happened because Celestia wanted only the strongest of the gods to hold a gnosis and divine authority. Given this is an incredible amount of power to give to someone, god or otherwise, it would make sense then why Celestia would have to be especially selective about who to give these to. And what's more selective than a battle royale amongst the gods that seemingly wiped out most of the god race? However, even though this is merely something I came up with to justify the glory of Celestia, ultimately I will admit there are some problems with it, such as how does this method ensure that there are no malevolent deities who become Archons? You know who I'm talking about, those who would seek to conspire against the heavens' glow and align themselves with the sovereigns and that bastard crackhead Dragon King Nibelung. Well, the answer is it doesn't, and if this was the sole purpose of the war, why were some gods seemingly handed the position with no conflict, such as Egeria, Rukkhadevata, and King Deshret? Even though the latter declined the offer, it is said that King Deshret was offered the gift granted by the Divine Throne. Furthermore, why couldn't Celestia have just handpicked all the gods they wanted to be Archon? As selective as a war may be, nigga, just pick them. And lastly, why even risk giving the gods of the mortal realm gnosis and authority? Why not just keep that shit in a vault, completely risk-free from all the fuckery that's going on right now? From the perspective of the gods, fighting over the divine thrones that opened up in Celestia may have been their reason for participating in the Archon War, but what of Celestia's reasons for even instigating a war of this magnitude in the first place? What if it's because they needed to? They needed to cause a cataclysmic war that would bring the Earth on the brink, and they knew the only way they could do that was to provoke the power-hungry god race into fighting amongst themselves by offering them unimaginable power in the form of a gnosis, something that Dainsleif alluded to before the game even came out.
The war has already begun. It is just a continuation of past battles. The gods goad us on with the promise of their 7 treasures. Rewards for the worthy, the doorway to divinity.
But why would they need to do this, you might be wondering? The answer is simple, my friends. A great war is what resets the Samsara cycles. I noticed something odd in the Chenyu Vale quest, and it's the way Fujin describes the Archon War. She described it as, quote, when the floods overturned the heavens and the earth split open. This description of the Archon War is nearly identical to how the war with the second who came is described as, where Eboshi later tells us, quote, later, a great war broke out in which the heavens capsized and the earth was ripped asunder. This land was then plunged into the dark ocean depths.
An unimaginable war took place in Teyvat, causing destruction on an unprecedented scale. The world itself was on the verge of collapse.
The floods overturning the heavens in the Archon War and the heavens being capsized during the war with the second who came convey the same exact message, that there's some sort of upheaval going on in Celestia during these wars, while the earth being split open in the Archon War and being rent asunder during the war with the second who came literally mean the same exact thing. So how could it be then that both of these wars are described in a nearly identical manner, despite them being different wars? Well, it's because the Archon War was simply the Great War in the new Samsara Cycle, similar to how Nahida is Rukkhadevata in the new Samsara Cycle.
We are manifestations of the same nature, hence why we would appear exactly the same.
We're of the same nature? Why?
Because you are me, and I am you. You are me in the new Samsara.
The new Samsara?
With 4 Samsara cycles in Teyvat, there have also been 4 Great Wars. In the Hyperborea era, there was the original Great War between the Sovereigns and the Primordial One, a progenitor god hailing from beyond the stars. And then, in the Atlantean era, there was the Great War of Vengeance between the second who came and the reigning, defending, undisputed champion, the Primordial One, a progenitor god hailing from beyond the stars. In the Remuria cycle, there was the Great War of the Gods, and in the Chronaria cycle, there was Conria, which itself also saw the Earth split open. Each war essentially acted as a reset, bringing about a new order each time. The war between the Primordial One and the Sovereigns brought an end to the reign of the Dragon Race. The war between the Primordial One and the Second Who Came brought an end to the unified civilization. The war between all the gods ushered in the Age of Visions, and the war between Conria and the gods will soon bring about the end of the reign of the gods. However, while 3 of these wars seemingly occurred, well, I hesitate, naturally, As in Celestia didn't have to do anything for them to get going, the Archon War was brought about as a direct result of their actions, so why then would they cause this cataclysmic war and bring about another reset? From where I stand, or well, sit, it's because of the aftermath of the war with the second who came, in which Neuvillette's story on Visions tells us, quote, severely wounded in the Great War of Vengeance, the usurper had their functions ruined and can no longer use their absolute authority to suppress the original order of this world. To continue to subdue and control the resentments and loathing of the world, the usurper and one who came after created the Gnosis together, so it came that an order was made to be upheld. I'd imagine the primordial one being severely wounded forced Celestia's hand into causing this war and bringing about a new Samsara Cycle, and if Celestia needed to cause a devastating war, who better to turn to than the gods of the mortal realm, and what better way to cause them to fight than to offer them power? Albeit a bit of a pessimist, Scaramouche tells us it's a rare sight to see a god who doesn't want power.
The strife engraved upon a gnosis. You're talking about the Archon War. Teyvat's current peace was not easily won. I didn't personally participate in the Archon War, but the way I see it, all those losses were meaningless, driven by the demands of the laws. There's no point in bringing it up again.
Is that so? Yet I am deeply disappointed that I was never allowed the fortuity to personally participate in the Archon War. This is a first. Encountering a god in this world who does not crave power.
Implying all the gods love power, and you know what? Good for them, good for them. Nothing bad's ever come from people who wanted powers. So it really does seem like Celestia manipulated all the gods into fighting with one another. It's funny though, even though Celestia played on the gods' desires for power to kickstart the war, ultimately the ones who became Archon were the ones who didn't crave power in the slightest. Barbados was helping in a rebellion, Morax was just defending Liyue, and Makoto, I have no idea what they were doing during the Archon War. But I mean, those two were like the furthest thing from being power hungry as you could be. Makoto was pretty chill, and A just gave up the Gnosis as soon as she got it. And there ain't no way in hell gentle Egeria was out here slaying gods to become an Archon. Ruka Devata became one because she was an avatar of Ermin. So honestly, the only person this might ring true for is whoever the original God of War was. That's the only person I could see here going, yeah, I want this position! I want this position, my nigga! Of course, even if this is all true, the question then becomes, why do the Samsara Cycles exist, and why does there need to be a gigantic war in them? Is it a power and control thing or what? What's going on here? Furthermore, how did the reset help to lessen the condition of the primordial one? That, I would imagine, is all tied into the truth of this world, but another problem with this is, how does Celestia decide when a reset is good versus bad? So for instance, if they control all of fate, then surely they knew about the Conrian disaster ahead of time, but didn't do anything to avert it, but rather just chose to confront it when it already happened. How do these resets benefit Celestia? I have no idea.